Okay, everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to the Woodshop. The table's a little bit messy, but that's okay. That means we got things going on, and that's what we're getting started with today. We're going to go ahead and start building the cabinets for behind me. We're going to start with the lower three, and since they're all pretty much carbon copies of each other, I'll just kind of speed run through building one, and then the other three, or the other two, will just kind of pop up behind. So I got all the materials necessary today. We're in it for some amount, which I'll give later just because I don't know what it is at the top of my head. We've got some cool new tools that we're going to use to cut our dados. I'll focus on those later. We're going to use the track saw to cut down the sheet goods. And I think that's all I can fit into this introduction. So let's go ahead and let's get started building. Okay, so we're back out here with the track saw, our foam sheet, and the plywood sheet goods. I've already kind of told you how to use the track saw, but what I want to bring your attention to is how I built these cut sheets in SketchUp. So I'll throw them on the screen now, and if you can see, they're kind of, well, they would work really well on a CNC, but they don't necessarily work well for cutting with a table saw or even a track saw. Mainly because with a track saw or table saw, because that round blade, you can't cut a perfect 90-degree corner and stop without extending past the corner itself. I'll throw on a screen here kind of what I mean and how it continues past the corner itself in each direction. And so what I have to do is break the plywood down into like cross sections so that I can cut in just one direction and cut out the piece that I'm trying to do. So for instance, since this side of the plywood here will give me two side pieces to my carcass, I can't cut that 90 degree, so I'm going to cut horizontally across the piece so that I can just make my two cuts right here up the center, and I'll have the piece. That kind of is hard to explain, so we'll just go ahead and cut, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so you'll see what I mean here. Now that I've cut it horizontally, I can cut the vertical side pieces for the first carcass out now and making those crisp 90-degree angles, whereas I wouldn't have beforehand. So we've got two for this panel. Let's go ahead and get cutting. All right, I'm back. Just saw me get done using the track saw. Again, I can't say it enough. Super happy with that decision, that purchase. Can't recommend a track saw highly enough. It made breaking down that plywood so easy. And honestly, if I wasn't running out of the daylight, I think I could finish this cabinet in 3 hours tops. Easy, all said and done. What we're going to get started with now is cutting the braces for the cabinet. Now we're using the table saw to do that since we've cut the plywood in such a way that we can run it where the side going through the table saw being ripped is longer than the width of the board that we're pushing through. That's where you get some torsion if it's wider than it is long, and you can get that blade pinch, shoot it back, all kinds of dangerous things. So that's where you want to get the plywood to, the sheet good, before you can start ripping it. What I want to talk to you guys about is an upgraded table saw fence and some accessories for it. The real reason I upgraded the table saw fence. There will be a short coming out on this shortly, but just to show you, it's an upgraded table saw fence, so it's a little bit taller than the OEM fence that comes with this DeWalt saw, but it's pre-cut and ready, shipped from TSO Products to just be attached to the mounting brackets that are already on the saw. So it took me like 5 minutes to do, but I really wanted these JessEm stock guides for my table saw. You'll see them on the bigger industrial saws like cabinet saws, but this way I can use it on my little contractor saw. So here's what it does here. So if I am moving my fence, as I would be, to cut my piece through the table saw, I'm going to lock my fence in place, and then I'm going to butt my stock up against it by raising these pieces up and out of the way, and I can just tighten that so it's locked out of the way. Push this against my fence, let it sit kind of where it does naturally. And now as I push my stock through the fence, these bearings will roll with it, but they lock so they don't roll backwards. You'll see me, I'm sliding it back, but that's besides the point. It rolls with me as I push it through here. And they're at an angle, so it keeps the stock pressed into the fence. As you'll see here, I'm just sliding it, and I'm not putting any inwards pressure towards the fence like I usually have to. These keep it there nice and tight, so we'll just lock those down in place. And you'll see it doesn't really want to come back, but it does go through. So super happy with that decision. We'll use them for the first time on this cut, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so you just saw me rip for the first time with the upgraded fence and then the stock guides. And for, I think, 150 bucks really is what that ran me. I'll put it up for sure on the screen. And the links will be down in the description, non-affiliate, because I really do believe in this product. That was really nice. Easiest time I've ever had ripping material with this saw. One, because I've extended the work surface, but also the stock guides kept everything nice, tight, and moving along. And especially where I noticed it the most, which is interesting, was at the end of the cut, right? Usually at the end of a cut, I just have the pressure that I'm putting with my push stick as I push it through, and you see some deflection, right? My arm's extended, the blade's going, so obviously I'm not trying to be right on top of it, and that's where I see usually the most deflection and the most unstableness of the piece. However, with these stock guides being right there, man, it was easy. It kept it nice, tight all the way through, and I just pushed it on through. Great upgrade. If you've got a 10-inch DeWalt table saw contractor, go ahead. Spend 150 bucks, get yourself the upgrade. It's very nice. We're going to go ahead on to the next piece. All right, day 2 for me. We're back. We've got all our pieces cut out for the first carcass, and what we're going to start doing now is cutting the dados for our back piece and then for the shelves that go in it. So you'll see me attempt 2 different methods at cutting dados, and if you've been on this channel for a while, you've seen me try a couple different ways, the router table with my table saw, etc., to cut dados. So with this way, we're going to use the table saw once more. See, I got everything in place, and the biggest thing to remember when cutting dados with your table saw is to remove the riving knife as it sits a little higher than the blade, and it'll cause your piece to rise up if you're not careful. So we've got our stock guides in place, got the blade set to a 1/2 inch deep, which is what I want my dado to be, and we've got it dialed in to be exactly where the dado needs to go. So we'll do this way first, and then you'll see me trying a different way with a new accessory that I got for my track, for the track saw, and then my router. I'm pretty excited about it. Let's go ahead and cut. Okay, so now I just want to bring everybody's attention to, remember, we're working with nominal plywood here, so even though I bought 1/4 inch plywood, it's not really a 1/4 inch. It's a 1/16 below a 1/4 inch, which all my plywood seems to be a 1/16 inch thinner. So an old trick is you just take your 1/4 inch nominal piece of plywood, take your 1/4 inch sheet of plywood. I took a piece of scrap and I held it right against this edge here, and then I traced along where the other end of it is, the other side of it, so that I got an exact thickness, which should be about a 1/16 below a 1/4 inch, which you could do if you just knew that. So I went ahead and dialed in the table saw, and we'll just go ahead and cut. All right, so we've got our dado cut now, and we're just going to take our scrap piece, which we use to measure this dado, and make a test dry fit. So we'll try to wedge it down in there. Look at that, and it's nice, tight, and square, so that's really good. That's what you want to see, and that's how you can make sure your dados are tight and not just to a 1/4 inch thickness. So anyways, that's our first dado. Go ahead and do the next piece and get going. All right, everyone, so this is the dado setup. More to follow on whether it's more efficient or not than using the table saw or the router table. I can tell you the quick benefits off the top of my head. The benefit to using this setup instead of the router table with a 3/4 inch straight bit is that this is a really big piece, and I'd be feeding it through kind of the same rules as the table saw with the shorter end as opposed to the longer end. You always want the longest part of your piece against the fence of the tool that you're using. And since the dado is going perpendicular here to the longest part of my piece, it would be a little bit dangerous in my opinion. Doing it on the table saw, I think table saws work really good for 1/4 inch dados. However, when you start to get bigger, if you're using a certain type of blade, which I can't come up with the top of my head right now, it'll leave kind of like grooves in your dado, which may not let things sit properly, sit flatly, which is why it's really efficient to use a straight bit from a router. Okay, so all that said, you've got my DeWalt track here and then an adapter, and this is DeWalt or Porter Cable specific, but it's made by DeWalt, and it sits on your track and allows the router to slide, and it keeps it straight. So we're going to see, it's been a really long time since I used my plunge router because it's usually set in my router table, but I've got everything hooked up, I've got everything dialed in, I've got it set, and this is going to be different depending on your setup, but 4.5 inches from where I want my dado to start, or where I want the router bit to contact the edge of the piece to the edge of the track here, and so that allows me to line everything up properly. We're going to do it in 1/4 inch depths to get a 1/2 inch dado, and we're going to see. All right, sweet. So did that work or what? I think it worked really, really well. I'm gonna go ahead and get my test scrap piece here, and that's a straight cut. It sits in there pretty good. It's not quite snug because, of course, nominal thickness plywood here, and we're using a 3/4 inch dead-on bit, so there's that about 1/16 of wiggle room, but that's okay since I just needed these to add some support. But I mean, that worked great, worked as advertised, really, really easy to move the bit through the piece here, and definitely super pleased with that. So we'll go ahead and knock out the rest of the dados. All right, so I got everything cut, all my dados cut. I switched up my plan a little bit. These middle shelf dados were only supposed to go in 11 inches, which was like, you know, the shelf itself. But then, let's see if you can see it here if I move this shelf out of the way. As I kind of stood them down, I realized that the bottom shelf was going to be here, and then the middle shelf, which is not, it's lower than the middle, was going to be, I don't know what that is. It's just over 13 inches apart, which may be enough. I'm not sure. It looked a little low, so I decided that it might be better to have these shelves be removable. I don't know if they'll quite be removable once I get the face frames in there. That's kind of to be determined. My gut answer is no. We will find out. So I just went ahead and made the dado cut all the way through. It won't matter any in the end. If I was making this for a kitchen or something, this would be a different conversation, but it's shop furniture, so I get to play around and experiment. You'll also notice that I have 2 1/4 inch dados in this one, and it's because I knew this because I built a cabinet once, but obviously I've forgotten mistakes, and now I'm relearning them the hard way. These kind of book match each other, so since I made them identical, essentially 1 1/4 inch dado was on this side and one was on this side, so when I stood them up, they were opposing each other. So you have to make them book match, which means if I put these side by side together, end to end, they match each other perfectly. So I had to cut another dado to get that to happen. Again, shop furniture, perfect time to make mistakes and learn the hard way. So now we're going to go ahead and start assembling this. This will just be a speedy montage. I'm going to use some wood glue on the bottom shelf and some countersunk 2-inch wood screws, and then we'll start putting the braces on and things like that. Let's get after it. All right, so we got the first cabinet halfway assembled, and it's pretty sturdy. Don't mind the wobble, it's because I'm on the slanted garage floor. It's dead on square though, 42 7/8. Let me check the overall width, see if we got that right since we're using that nominal ply, and we're on 36, pretty much dead. So that's great. It's what we wanted, 3 feet cabinets. This is a really big cabinet, definitely bigger than I thought. Just remember there's going to be a drawer up here and then 2 doors, and I think this middle shelf is actually totally fine. There's plenty of space below and above. I think I'm going to keep with the trend though, just because it's so much easier to cut that dado, and it's, you know, like I said, shop furniture. But everything went together really pretty smoothly. I've always said that building cabinets is a 2-man job, but I managed on my own today by myself. It's nice to have the flat workbench to use to get this thing started, and then you saw I moved it over to the ground. So we've got some nicer quality plywood that we'll use for the top, and the braces here are nice and sturdy. We'll build the face frame out of poplar, and then cut the doors, cut the drawers. So that's really what we've got to do next. The only real big mistake that I've made on this one so far, let me turn around so I can show you. Okay, so when I made my initial measurements to take the to cut the 1/4-inch dado, I tried to do it so that I did it kind of so that the plywood cleat and the back braces would be perfectly flush against this back piece. However, I think I needed to cut towards the back instead of towards the front, and so I did it incorrectly, and so there's about maybe a 1/16, just over a 1/16 lip between the back brace. Let me just get one so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, I think that ought to be good enough. Yeah, so you can see there's an 1/8 actually. It's more than a 1/16. So an 1/8. I just don't want to make this mistake again. It'll be fine. It just means that the cleat won't grab as nicely as I want it to, but it'll still work just fine. So we'll go ahead, and we got to cut that cleat as well and then put this bottom bracer on. So we'll go ahead and jump into the next section of this build, which, like I said, will be the face frame and then the doors and the drawer and all that good stuff. Okay, so I know that I've covered French cleats previously on the channel. However, it was actually in a video that didn't get a whole lot of views. The little link to the video will be right up on the screen here in case you want to watch it. I built a pretty cool trophy wall display for a local organization back in Kansas. Here nor there, talking about French cleats. So the first thing we're going to do is put our riving knife back since we had removed it. We get a angle gauge. I use a digital angle gauge, but you could use lots of different things. Turn it on. We're going to zero it out here, so we lay it on the table, hit 0, dead on 0, and then my blade tilts this way, so I'm going to put the angle gauge on the opposite side of the way it tilts, and I'm going to make sure it's not on a tooth. Then I'm going to unlock my gauge, and I'm going to go ahead and set it to a 45-degree angle. And I do it when the blade is all the way up. It doesn't want to quite go to a 45. Okay, I think that's about as good as I'm going to get it. Close to a 45 there. Okay, done with this till we reset our blade to a 90. And then we're going to take our stock, and of course we don't need the blade that high. Table saw safety. Want to go so that when we come through, the teeth are just poking through as you would with any other cut. Okay, so I've gone ahead and marked the middle of this 6-inch board, so 3 inches, and you want that cut to be generally at the 3-inch mark. So we'll go ahead and leave it there and bring our table saw fence in. So it's kind of weird how I'm doing this since I'm not putting it right up against the fence like I usually do, but you want that 3-inch to be where these teeth hit, or kind of right in the middle of it since you're cutting that. Yeah, right in the middle, not really where these teeth hit, since you're cutting the 45, and it's going to effectively be just to the left and right of that center cut. Okay, so that's good enough for me. It doesn't need to be perfect for the French cleat. We've got our stock guides in. We're going to go ahead and rip our piece. right, so you see I've cut this 45-degree angle in the the piece of plywood here. So I just go ahead and mark, since this is kind of where it's freshest in my head. I want piece and out with the cleat facing down, and then I want wall, out, piece facing up. The reason I write that, so piece, I want this side of the cleat on my piece. I want out, meaning I want this facing out, like this side of the board, and then down, I want the cleat to be facing down. For this one, I want it on the wall, I want to see the out, and then I want the cleat facing up. So let's take it over and show you what that looks like on the piece. Okay, so I think fairly simple here. We take piece out, we're going to put it on the piece itself, and then we'll go ahead and secure it in place. So let me get the glue and get that gone. All right, so now that that's all attached, and I just went ahead and added 2 pieces to the middle here, since this is really what's holding all of my weight together for the entire piece, or holding all of the weight for the piece to the wall. So I just wanted to make sure it was as secure as possible, and I got a little bit of splitting down here, which made me a little nervous. So anyways, this is how it works. I've got piece out, the cleat facing that way. I'll put it on the wall. Oh, see, this is why I always write. So if I were to put it on the wall like this, it would be wrong. So I actually have to put it on the wall like this, so that when the piece slides onto it, and this is a little tight, when it's going to hang, just like that. So it'll hang on there, and this will be bolted to the wall with some lag screws. So I'll go ahead and make this more obvious, so I do it correctly. That's why we write things and test. Okay, so unfortunately for a lot of that face frame piecing together, I just kind of had to time lapse through it and didn't really talk you through it. My family was walking around, and I try not to record when they're around. But anyways, we got the face frame together. I can't tell you how critical it is to have a flat work surface like I have finally and didn't have in the last shop back in Kansas. Having a flat work surface allowed me to clamp the pieces together with just some Harbor Freight clamps around the edges of the table. And once I have T-track in that work surface like I plan to, it's going to be so much better, because then I don't have to just rely on the outside of the table as I do now, but I can use the T-track as it sits throughout the rest of the bench. You'll see what I mean later on. But either way, it still went together pretty good. The poplar boards that I had from a big box store, surprise, surprise, are horribly warped. So they're kind of just all over the place right now. But we're going to go through and brad nail them in place. Everything's pretty much square. It's about a 1/16 out. And like I said, I think you just can't beat it. So that's okay. You also saw me cut the poplar boards on my miter saw on the ground, and that's just where I'm going to have to use that miter saw until I get it mounted in its home up on the workbench once we've got everything mounted to the wall. It's just too heavy to move around, so that's what it's going to be. Let's go ahead and brad nail. All right, guys, so I'm actually going to go ahead and end the video there, and we will finish the drawer build and the door build. Since we've never done that before, we'll have to use some new jigs like the Euro hinge jig, things like that, once we come back in part 2 of this video for the first couple cabinet builds here. But I'm super pleased with how this turned out. It's way bigger than I thought it was going to be, which is definitely okay in this case. I mean, I wanted them to be 36 inches wide, but like comprehending how big 36 inches was really going to be, I couldn't. And the fact that I'm going to have 3 of these, and there's like a middle shelf on them, and I you know, there's going to be a huge drawer. I'm super pumped about it. Just can't wait for that. Get ready for it. The jigs I have and the accessories that I bought prior to this, like the upgraded table saw fins with those rolling stock guides and the router adapter guide for the track saw, all will be linked in the description, and I'm pretty sure none of those are going to be affiliate links because Amazon doesn't sell them. But check them out. I really believe in them. They made my process so much easier using the track saw to break everything down. Again, just super pleased with it. Cabinets, I think, are intimidating for new woodworkers, but they're really simple, and with these tools, they are really easy to do. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed all the mistakes that us hobbyist woodworkers make, and that you guys learn from them. This has been 5 o'clock Woodshop. Thanks for watching. Until next time, like, subscribe, and share. Comment for more.